Good evening, everybody. The regular meeting of the Independent School District 279 School Board is called to order at 6:01 p.m. on Tuesday, December 17th, 2019. Welcome, everybody. Seated in front of you this evening, from my left to your right, are Director Jackie Mosqueda-Jones, Director Kelsey Dawson-Walton, Director Jessica Craig, myself, Director Mike Ostafi, Director Tanya Simons, Director Heather Douglas, and Superintendent Corey McIntyre. So if you can, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and Director Simons, will you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, we will be recognizing some of our recent retirees. Superintendent McIntyre.
Thank you, Chair Ostafi. So last year, the district implemented a new way to recognize retirees closer to their actual retirement dates instead of waiting for an end-of-the-year event. So we have two school board meetings that have been designated to include the agenda item around retiree recognition. So tonight's meeting is our first of two such opportunities in our current school year to recognize our retirees. Between July and December of 2019, we have 29 individuals across all bargaining groups in the district that have retired. Those 29 individuals have provided over 480 combined years of service to ISD 279. Letters of invitation and emails were sent to all of our retirees. Many were not able to be here tonight, and we wish them well in their retirement. I want to start with a quote tonight. It's by Walter Reuther. "There's no greater calling than to serve others. There's no greater contribution than to help others. And there's no greater satisfaction than to have done it well." The contributions, retirees, that you have made to many generations of students is significant. When you decided to work in a school district, you chose a job of the heart. We're glad it was this district. It will be so difficult to find staff that works as hard as you and is as dedicated as much as you are. You have made the district and our students in it better. And for that, we thank you, and we want you to enjoy your retirement. So at this time, I'd like to ask board members to please come down to the front of the dais, and we can congratulate those who are with us here tonight. Okay, so we have 3 longtime Osseo employees that we'd like to recognize this evening. For each individual, I'll be sharing some words of appreciation and then ask each individual to step forward and be congratulated by the board. First, can we welcome Debbie Hahn. Just a little bit about Debbie. Debbie's first day of work in Osseo area schools was September 8th, 1997. She retired as an AESP in August of 2019. Debbie dedicated over 20 years to the Osseo area schools, spending most of her time in the division of I2T2, which is our information and instructional technology team. She was well respected and regarded by her coworkers, and she ensured that the leadership team was successful in providing high levels of technology service to our district. Debbie's legacy will carry on the I2T2 division, it'll carry on in the I2T2 division, and we wish her well and all the best in her future endeavors, which are assured will be great around fashion and travel with her husband in their airplane. So, Debbie, thank you very much for your service. John Grubner. So while John's receiving his appreciation, I wanted to talk about him a little bit. John retired from his position of building engineer at Rush Creek Elementary. Principal Josie Johnson shared that John has been a valued and beloved member of the Rush Creek team. He holds high standards for maintaining the facilities and is exceptional at collaborating and problem solving. John has a great sense of humor and consistently finds ways to positively impact all students and staff at Rush Creek. We will wish him all the happiness in his retirement, and Rush Creek will not be the same without him, as he will be greatly missed. Congratulations, John. And lastly, Dan Miller. So Dan was hired by ISD 279 in 1984. He's retiring as the building operations supervisor at Osseo Middle School. Osseo Middle School's principal, Brian Chance, shared that Dan has done an excellent job in serving students and staff at Osseo Middle School. He takes great pride in ensuring the building is at the highest standards of cleanliness. And I can attest to that. I was out there talking with him not that long ago. He was showing me around. So Dan understands how this directly impacts how students and staff feel about the building and how it ultimately impacts learning. Dan has built many relationships at the school and in the district, and we hope he will continue to do this in his retirement. We wish Dan and his wife Chris the best as they begin this new journey in life. Dan, congratulations wherever you are. Over there you are. Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody, and we appreciate the long years of service that everyone had put in, 480 years. That's a lot, and we will miss them, and we'll miss their experience and their dedication to our students. So again, thank you. Board members, in front of you is the agenda. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda this evening? Is there a motion to accept the agenda as is?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the agenda? Hearing none, all in favor of accepting the agenda as is, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Next item on the agenda is Truth and Taxation, which will be presented by Ron Meyer, Executive Director of Finance and Operations. And this is a Truth and Taxation hearing and public comment and questions. So, Mr. Meyer, it's all yours.
Thank you, Chair Osseo, School Board members, Superintendent McIntyre. On the agenda this evening is approval of the preliminary levy limitation for taxes payable in 2020. State statute requires that the school board certify the preliminary levy limitation by September 30th of each year. The purpose of this approval is to provide information to Hennepin County Auditor so that proposed tax statements can be prepared and mailed to all taxpayers by November 24th. The final levy certification will take place at the December 17th regular school board meeting after this Truth and Taxation hearing, giving the school board an opportunity to review the levy before its final approval and certification. For this Truth and Taxation hearing, state law requires a presentation of the current year budget, prior year actual revenue and expenditures, proposed property tax levy including percentage of increase, and the specific purpose and reasons for which taxes are being increased. The district must also allow for public comment. In order to accomplish the state requirements, the hearing agenda for tonight will include background information on the district's 2020 budget along with actual financial results for fiscal year 2019. This will be followed by information on the district's proposed tax levy for taxes payable in 2020. At the end of the presentation, the public will have the opportunity to provide comments. So first, I will provide some background information about public school funding. The Minnesota State Constitution includes the duty of the legislature to establish a system of public schools. The local property tax levy is one of the mechanisms that the state legislature uses to fund public education. As a result, public school funding is highly regulated, and revenue formulas, tax policy, and the tax levy process are actually established through state law. Some other pertinent information about school district funding. Over the past 16 years, state aid through the general education revenue formula, which is the main source of school district revenue, has not kept up with the rate of inflation. With inflation considered, the per pupil allowance would have needed to increase by an additional 9.7% over the same time period. So on this chart, it shows the dotted green line as the increase to the funding formula. And the red line over the top of it is adjusted for inflation using the Consumer Price Index. You can see through this illustration the funding gap. A key point about the tax levy is that increases or decreases in the local levy do not necessarily translate into changes in the school district's budget. State-determined formulas and voter approval create limits for the tax levy. Some increases are actually offset by reductions in state aid, and expenditure budgets are limited by and established through separate processes. Thus, an increase in school taxes does not always correlate to an increase in the school district's expenditure budget. Now I will review the fiscal year 2020 budget. Because school district fiscal years run from July 1st through June 30th, tonight we will review the current year's budget, which ends on June 30th of 2020. The tax levy that is being considered this evening will provide revenue for next year's budget, which begins on July 1st of 2020. While taxpayers will see on their tax statements the levied amounts for cities, counties, and school districts, the budget cycles are not the same. As this chart illustrates, the city and county budget in the same year that they levy taxes, whereas school districts that approve tax levies in December are utilizing that revenue for their next fiscal year. The levy conversation tonight includes revenue for the 2020-2021 fiscal year that starts on July 1st, 2020. The school district budgets within several different funds as listed on this slide. The budget for the majority of K-12 operation lies within the first fund on the list, the general fund. Other funds that apply to the levy are the community service fund and the general debt service fund. This chart shows the fiscal year 2019 actual year-end results and the fiscal year 2020 adopted budget amounts that was published in the newspaper and is also posted on our district website. This is actually a required publication, and it's included here in our presentation for information purposes only. This pie chart shows Osseo area schools' projected revenue for all funds. The total budgeted revenue for fiscal year 2020 is over $366 million. I will provide detail on the blue portion of the chart, the General Operating Transportation Fund, which makes up approximately 78.5% of the total budget. This chart shows the revenue sources for the General Operating Transportation Fund. As shown on the previous chart, this makes up 78.5% of the revenue received by the school district. This fund's revenue comes from four main sources. With state aid, both our general in the light blue section and special education state aid, which is the red section, making up 74% of the revenue. And property taxes, the dark blue section, making up 19.8%. Federal revenues, the orange section, and the gray other section, such as grants, make up the remaining 6.3%. This chart shows the projected general fund expenditures by program. Most of the expenditures directly support students through regular special education and vocational instruction, instructional support, and transportation services. This chart breaks down the expenditure budget in another way, by what we refer to as the object category. The projected expenditures by object category indicates that almost 85% of the budget pays for people. The salaries and benefits of employees who deliver educational services and support school district operations. Education is a people-intensive business, making this a normal pattern for school districts. We will now move on from the budget to discuss the proposed tax levies for taxes payable in 2020. Every owner of taxable property pays property taxes for various taxing jurisdictions: county, city or township, school district, special districts, in which their property is located. Each taxing jurisdiction sets its own tax levy, often based on limits in state law that we talked about earlier. The county, Hennepin County in our case, sends out bills, collects taxes from property owners, and then distributes those funds back to those taxing jurisdictions, including our school district. This is a sample of what a property tax statement may look like. It's very small print, but you will see through the arrow there is where the school district taxing jurisdiction is on a tax statement. Each school district may levy in over 40 different categories. Levy limits, or the maximum levy amounts for each category, are set in two different ways, either by state law or by voter approval. The Minnesota Department of Education calculates detailed levy limits for each public school district. We reviewed these limits with the school board when the preliminary levy was set on September 24th, as well as at our December 3rd work session. This is a schedule of events that establish the payable 2020 tax levy. Tonight, we are holding this public hearing, and then the board is scheduled to take action on the final levy later this evening. State law requires that we explain the reasons for major increases in the overall levy. The total proposed tax levy for taxes payable in 2020 is increasing by 0.57%, or $564,522. This slide shows the line items of the levy within the three funds for which the tax levy is a revenue component that I mentioned earlier. The general fund, which includes the capital fund for these purposes, the community service fund, and then the debt service fund. So for instance, you do not see the food service fund on this slide because there's not a tax levy component to that fund's revenue. The first column of numbers show the tax levy for each line item last year. The second column, which is highlighted in yellow, shows the proposed tax levy for taxes payable in 2020. And then the third column indicates the increase or decrease in that particular line item. Finally, the percentage change by fund and for the district in total is indicated in the last column. The next several slides will explain some of the line items of the levy that have increased, specifically the voter-approved operating referendum, the long-term facilities maintenance, both in the general fund as well as the offsetting impact in the debt service fund, the prior year adjustments, and finally, the reduction for debt excess. The voter-approved operating levy has an overall increase due to the formula for this line item. First, the legislature approved a change that transferred $300 per pupil unit from the voter-approved referendum to the local optional revenue. Second, our district's voters approved an annual inflationary increase, which for this year is calculated at 1.85%. This line item also includes increases due to an expected increase in overall student enrollment. This formula provides for funding for the district's general operations. Long-term facility maintenance, or LTFM revenue, is decreasing by just over $1 million in the general fund. There is a planned offsetting increase in the debt service fund that was designed to maintain a level tax rate for overall capital-related levies over time. Thus, the debt service fund for LTFM is increasing by just over $1.5 million. Our prior year adjustments, this is the area that estimates, which are used to calculate the current year's levy, are updated and retroactively adjusted to reflect the actual data that we realized. This includes enrollment as well as expenditure adjustments. This year, this category also includes the negative adjustment because we did not utilize the lease levy authority that was in the previous year's levy, which gave our Enrollment and Capacity Management Committee flexibility in their facility planning. Because we did not utilize those funds, it comes back through the levy as a negative adjustment. The debt service fund levy is linked directly to our scheduled principal and interest payments, which school districts are required to levy at 105% in order to cover delinquent taxes. If delinquent taxes are less than 5%, these funds are returned to taxpayers through a levy reduction formula established in the tax levy process. Because the reduction for taxes payable in 2020 is lower than the reduction in 2019, this line item is experiencing an increase. While changes in the dollar amount of the levy provided through funding formulas can cause the tax bill for individual property to increase or decrease, other factors are also involved, including changes in the value of the individual property, as well as changes in the value of property in all of the district. The following slides are tables and graphs showing examples of changes in the school district portion of property taxes from taxes payable in 2017 to 2020. The examples were prepared by the district's financial advisors, Ellers and Associates. All of the examples are based on an 18% increase in property value over that 4-year period from 2017 to 2020, including a 6% increase from 2019 to 2020. This different chart shows the tax impact for properties at specific amounts, again, whose values has increased by that 18% over the 4-year period, as well as the 6% from 19 to 20. The blue bar indicates a home whose value has grown to $250,000 since 2017. For this home at that value, the 2020 tax impact of the proposed levy is a decrease of $32 per year from the 2019 levels. Each property will have unique characteristics. Actual changes in value may be more or less than this for any parcel of property. The amounts are intended to provide a representation of what may have happened to school district property taxes over this period for typical properties. So this 250,000 residential property on the left-hand side, again, will experience a $32 decrease in school taxes from $1,189 for taxes payable in 2019 to $1,157 for taxes payable in 2020. Again, this assumes that the property tax value increased from 6%. Using the same assumptions, this $400,000 residential property on the right-hand side will experience a tax decrease of $58 per year with those same assumptions applied. If we shift to commercial or industrial property, this $1 million commercial industrial property on the left-hand side will experience a tax decrease of $185 per year. And finally, this $1 million apartment property will experience an estimated tax decrease of $191 per year, again with that same 6% market value increase assumption. I want to point out briefly that the state of Minnesota has designated a senior citizen property tax deferral. The Senior Citizens Property Tax Deferral Program allows property taxpayers who are 65 years or older and whose total household income of $60,000 or less to defer a portion of their homestead property taxes until some later time. It allows senior citizens whose property taxes are high relative to their incomes, but who wish to stay in their homes, an option for paying their property taxes. This option limits the amount of taxes paid to 3% of household income up to that $60,000 threshold. An important piece to this plan is that taxes are deferred, and that taxes plus interest must be paid when the home is sold or the homeowner dies. Applications for this program are available in the county auditor's office or may be obtained from the Department of Revenue's website, excuse me. So our next steps, in just a moment, I will turn it over to give an opportunity for any public comments regarding the proposed levy. Then later in the board meeting this evening, the board will certify the proposed tax levy. So it is time for our public comment requirement of this Truth in Taxation hearing. I'll turn it over to Chair Ostaffi to give direction to any community member wishing to give comment.
Is there anyone in the audience interested in speaking and commenting about the levy? If so, please step forward. Okay, if there is no other, here I am going to ask that we have no speakers. So with that, we will move on to the next agenda item. So, thank you very much, Mr. Meyer. Next agenda item is the audience opportunity to address the school board. And we have one speaker card this evening, and I'm going to read this, and this is not in per anybody. These are our guidelines. During audience opportunity to address the school board, I will call on each speaker who has submitted a speaker card, which we have one tonight. We ask that speakers keep their comments to 3 minutes. The board does not take action or discuss matters during this portion of the meeting. Speakers may be referred to the superintendent or staff if follow-up is necessary. And complete guidelines for public participation are provided on the meeting materials table and on the school board section of the district website. When I call your name, please come to the microphone and state your topic, and also state whether or not you are a district resident. And with that, Mr. William English, please step forward. Good evening.
Good evening, board members. I'm especially glad to see Board Director Dawson, that I've known since she was born. So I've known her many years. That speaks a little bit to my age.
Wait, how many years was that?
She's only 20.
Yeah, I had expected, first of all, I am a resident of the Osseo School District and have for the last 24 years. I expected some parents to be here tonight. They were trying to get here, as you know. Many of our parents, particularly those in Brooklyn, are working late. They're low-income people. They can't often get here. But I wear several hats. I've been a member of a group called Minnesota Come Back, which is engaged in education reform. As you know, Minnesota, and includes the Osseo School District, has the lowest graduation rate, lack of achievement for African American students in general and students of color particularly, in second only to Mississippi. That is true for Osseo. And parents are concerned. They're concerned enough to start organizing. A group that would have been here, the Minnesota Comeback, is currently organizing a parents' union, which will be later presented to this board to be recognized as effort to organize our parents around their concerns about the lack of proficiency of African American students and other students of color. You're not at proficiency. For those of you who are white in this audience and your students are at proficiency, let me tell you something. You don't need to measure proficiency. You need to measure a year's growth. So even when a student is proficient, if they're not achieve a year's growth, a good teacher is not standing in front of them, and your kid will suffer because they're going to live in a global economy. And right now, we're 26th in the world. That should be unacceptable to all of us who live in the Osseo School District. The question the parents wanted to ask me tonight, that they're concerned that the number of African American students of color are not at parity in proficiency with white students. What does the board plan to do to change the trajectory, and by what date certain? If you do not have a goal to end this, it'll never happen. We'd like to know the level of suspension of African American students and other students of color compared to white students. The state has published record that shows there is a high level of suspension for African American kids with the same offense than white kids. That is wrong. It is a violation of state and federal law. How many teachers of color employed at Osseo? We don't know. What are the total number of teachers? What we know is that teachers of color bring cultural competence and academic success into the classroom. We know that. The research will prove that. How many administrators of color employed in Osseo School? We certainly have qualified. I once heard a joke, and it may sound crude, but I'm going to say it to you. We have enough PhDs and masters in education to make 50 Tarzan movies. Get that. We have qualified people. The question is, they're not often are not licensed because Minnesota has barrier to license. A teacher from North Dakota can come here, never seeing a black student, and get certified. A teacher from Alabama with a PhD has to come here and spend $10,000 in the state. That's a legislative change, and this district needs to be lobbying to get that change made. Finally, what is the district's affirmative action plan for purchasing for minority and women-owned business? That is a state requirement. That number should look something like 33% for minorities and 25% for women-owned business. It should look like that. And the failure to have a plan bothers us. It bothers me as a Plymouth resident who pays significant amount of taxes for the Osseo School District, and we don't have a plan to do that. Our businesses employ more people of color because we also have the highest level of unemployment among African Americans in the nation. I plead with you as board members, and I pray for you as board members, to fix this problem. We come here as the Minnesota Comeback, the Minnesota Business Partnership, which is our partner, the parents in this district, our faith community, to partner with you. We don't want an adversarial relationship, but we are not afraid of them. If that's what it takes to move the needle, we have to do that. So I appreciate the time. I want to pay my respect to the superintendent, the schools, the principals, and everyone else that are here tonight. And I challenge you to work with us, to meet with our parents, even though they can't come here, meet them where they are. That's what aggressive school districts are doing. I urge you to take a look at your purchases. I saw $15 million up there to be spent for transportation. We have a number of transportation companies that are man-owned that do business all over this state, as far as Sauk Rapids, St. Cloud, Minneapolis. They also provide services to the Metro Transit. I don't know why they can't do business with Osseo when you've got opportunities for them, and that provides living wage jobs and benefits to people and the parents of students who come here who are students of color, African Americans, and African immigrants. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. And I'll leave you with that. I'm here to be your partner as an Osseo resident. I know what I'm doing. I'm an expert. I've been challenging school district, as some of your staff knows, for more than 15 years. I've been called Minneapolis Public Schools' worst nightmare. I'd like to be your partner. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. English. I do know that a couple of the items that you asked for have been publicly available, and I'll ask Superintendent McIntyre to make sure you receive those. Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is our superintendent report by Superintendent McIntyre.
All right, thank you, Chair Ostafi. So a regular part of the superintendent's report is to share points of pride in our district. Points of Pride celebrates students, staff, and community members who are contributing to the accomplishment of our mission, which is to inspire and prepare all students with confidence, courage, and competence to achieve their dreams, contribute to community, and engage in a lifetime of learning. I've asked our cabinet members to share with you some recent points of pride from our district.
In the category of achieving dreams, Jane O, a senior at Osseo Senior High, joined more than 500 other accomplished music students from across the United States last month for the National Association of Music Education 2019 All National Honor Ensembles. Performers were chosen through an audition process and represented band, orchestra, choir, and ensemble programs. Jane performed in the All National Honors Orchestra. Fair Oaks Elementary and Garden City Elementary are proud recipients of $1,000 Game On grants from Action for Healthy Kids this year. The schools used the grant money to invest in students' well-being, promoting nutrition, physical activity, and mindfulness to ensure all students are healthy, active, and ready to learn.
Our next category is contributing to community. This school year, students at Cedar Island Elementary have partnered with the Willows of Arbor Lakes, a memory care residence in Maple Grove. Several service projects are planned throughout the year, and to kick things off, fifth graders at the school recently used their recess time to create holiday cards for residents at the Willows. Rice Lake Elementary's PROS students, fifth graders selected as positive role models offering support, initiated a school-wide food drive in support of cross services this fall. The Rice Lake community donated more than 660 pounds of food for the drive. The pros then delivered and sorted the food at Cross. Palmer Lake Elementary's Girls on the Run team also hosted a food drive this fall, collecting more than 1,300 items for their community impact project.
In the category of lifelong learning, Zanewood Community School, a science, technology, engineering, arts, and math school, welcomed families and community partners to its Fall STEAM Fest on November 19th. At STEAM Fest, guests had the opportunity to get hands-on in the makerspace, art studio, and science lab, view and participate in demonstrations with the Park Center Senior High Robotics team, and more. This year, the first grade team at Birch Grove Elementary for the Arts began a monthly books and breakfast event where families are invited to the school for a light breakfast while reading a book with their scholar. Each child also gets to keep the book after the event. Kudos to teachers Erin Aulick, Leah Ermider, and Ann Jarrett, as well as ESPs Elena Hardy and Lori Johnson for leading this initiative.
Under the category of mission-driven employees, Dr. Rev Hellstrom, Director of Education Equity in Osseo Area Schools, received 2 statewide awards this fall. Hillstrom earned the Outstanding Administrator of the Year Award from the Minnesota Indian Education Association, as well as the Ron McKinley All My Relations Award from the Minnesota Education Equity Partnership. Families facing homelessness or financial hardship will find the holiday season a bit brighter due to the generosity of district employees and community partners. Members of the Osseo ESP Union recently assembled 242 bags filled with breakfast and snack items to provide extra comfort over the winter break to students experiencing homelessness. District social workers and community partner Boston Scientific coordinated a campaign to gather and distribute toys, clothing, and gift cards to more than 50 families in our community who are struggling with housing or financial hardships. You can read more points of pride on our website at district279.org.
All right, and in addition to our points of pride, I just have some updates on some work happening in the district here and previewing some things to come. I wanted to update everyone on the work that's been happening with our district as a part of our integrated facilities planning process. Research teams have been working on identifying elementary and secondary school needs, along with the needs related to student activities and athletic facilities. 4 advisory committees are creating observations and recommendations out of the discussions in the respective groups. We have enrollment and capacity, instructional programs, safety and security, and student activities. All the research teams and advisory committee work will be shared at the school with the school board on our work session on January 14th, 2020. And the board will use that information to provide direction to a district-level oversight task force that will review those findings, identify funding options, and develop recommendations for consideration that can be then further developed and taken out for appropriate public feedback. The board will consider taking action on the recommendations in the spring of 2020. So we look forward to learning about the work each committee is completing, hearing about that on January 14th, and as we continue with this facilities planning effort. Second update for tonight is our strategic planning process. And last time you heard me talk a little bit about this at our last meeting, and I just want to circle back and give a little bit of an update. We're continuing our planning and implementation of our early steps towards continuous improvement and better student outcomes through developing a new district strategic plan. Last month you heard a little bit about that overview of the planning process for the rest of the year. And as we move into the new calendar year, in January, we're going to be engaging in a few critical components of that plan. So I wanted to highlight just a few. So later this winter, we're going to be continuing our sessions with readying our system, readying our staff and our district leaders for the change process as we see and identify changes that are going to be needed. So we'll be completing a story wall and life cycle session with teachers and other staff in January to really identify events and trends that have kind of helped shape us to this point. We'll then do an environmental scan process with staff in February to develop a baseline for our current reality as a launching point for our work. And that'll really help us put us on a path to stronger development of our plan. Then later this winter, we'll be holding enhanced school and community-based stakeholder engagement sessions. And this is a piece I really wanted to stress. So we're going to be conducting the efforts to really collect those desired experiences of students through student sessions, collect those desired experiences and what education should look like from our families and parents and key community partners, and also do the same process collecting those elements of feedback from our staff. And you heard me say this last time, what excites me is really being able to structure opportunities and listen to our staff, listen to our parents and community and what they believe is important for us to improve, and also listen to our students who tell us, often very honestly, what we can do to increase their opportunities to be successful. So we'll continue to provide you updates on this work as we move into the winter months. And that leads me to student listening sessions. We just completed our fourth high school listening session yesterday at Park Center High School, as we've been doing those throughout the fall. And at these sessions, students are given opportunities to provide some open and honest feedback to district administration and board members when you've been able to attend about their experiences in our schools. The listening sessions are designed to gauge really how students perceive aspects of their education. That includes things around classes, how we offer courses, hours spent on homework is another popular topic, extracurricular activities, school safety, and relationships with our staff and student-to-student relationships as well in the school environment. So I did want to take a moment to thank all the students who have participated this fall and really taking the time to tell us their stories as we use that feedback to continue to create and develop the program of education that they need to be successful in the future. I'll just wrap up tonight lastly with our winter student activities are now very much in full swing. There's many activities happening, and I just encourage everyone in our system and in our communities to get out and support our students in the wide range of activities that we provide. So with that, that concludes my superintendent's report this evening.
All right, thank you very much, Superintendent McIntyre. Next agenda item are the school board reports. Director Mosqueda Jones, do you have a committee report or update?
I have nothing at this time.
Thank you. Director Dawson Walton?
I just attended the Association for Minnesota School District meeting a couple weeks ago with Superintendent McIntyre, and we adopted our legislative platform for 2020.
Thank you. Director Craig?
Not tonight.
Director Simons?
Yes, both the fiscal committee and the ECMAC committee met. On the fiscal committee, it was the first meeting of this school year, so we spent some time grounding. We also reviewed our investment portfolio. We learned about some planning for retiree benefits and how that affects our investment portfolio as well as our funding. We reviewed the integrated facilities planning, and they also reviewed our tax levy information tonight and shared feedback on that, which we received in advance of, a little bit of information on that in advance of this meeting, which was all members of the fiscal committee supported the 0.57 tax levy increase. And there was some rich feedback through that session and through that conversation. And then ECMAC, do you want me to talk on that? Or
Yeah, please do.
So ECMAC, we also met and continued the deep dive work on analyzing different recommendations to address capacity. And there were 4 different options that were presented. Much of the time was spent on 2 of the options. The team, the ECMAC committee kind of coalesced around 2 main options, which was a short-term capacity add, and really had some robust discussion on how we can address immediate concerns in the most efficient and cost-effective manner. And then there was a group that was very passionate about providing feedback and weighing the pros and cons of the long-term option. So that feedback will continue to come to this board as we get that information. And again, really in-depth analysis with a lot of data and really good pro and con discussion across the group.
And to that, I'm on that committee, and that committee actually makes a recommendation to the administration, who will take that into account as they make the recommendations. And I do not have a report this evening. Oh, I'm sorry.
I have 3.
All right. Thank you, Director Douglas.
So I'll make up for everybody. I did want to just say thank you to all the students that are here tonight. I know that you're probably here as part of a government class, and I recognize at least 1 or 2 people who were at the listening session at Maple Grove, so thank you for participating. And I am on 3 different committees, which all met within the last couple of weeks, so I have a couple of things to update. The first one that I'm going to share is my District 279 regular board meeting that we had on Thursday. We heard from our SEC principal, who has been in her role for 9 years, which is a pretty long time. Our SEC is a pretty high-need school. She discussed the continuous work surrounding improving equity and increasing our racial consciousness, which was a really great conversation, including the adoption of a new curriculum at our elementary level that better reflects the students that are served by the program, which are predominantly students of color. So we're really excited to roll that curriculum out and implement it over there. And my favorite part of that meeting is when we get to hear our student, spotlight student. So every month a student comes and shares their journey. Most of these kids have had pretty traumatic life experiences, and we heard from, Jayla is her name, and she has a deep passion for kids in the foster care system and wants to work for Child Protective Services, having been a student who's been involved in that program and not satisfied with her life experience. And she is about to graduate, and she's ready to make that next step. So it's a huge success story and absolutely my favorite part of these meetings. So that was really great. And we also reviewed our World's Best Workforce fiscal year 2020 plan and approved that as well as our legislative platform. And I'm really excited because we also voted on and approved our multi-tiered systems of support for a special education model. And were awarded a nearly $500,000 grant, which we intend to use for primarily prevention of escalated situations and debriefing of escalated situations, so that when big scary things happen in our schools, that we can protect the students better in those situations. So that was a really great meeting. And then I also had DPAC, our District Planning and Advisory Committee. We heard from Assistant Superintendents Kelly Parpart, Stephen Flisk, and Interim Superintendent Patrick Smith, as well as Kim Reescraft, to learn about next generation learning spaces, which ties in really well with our ECMAC team. So these committees kind of work together and make recommendations for the school board and administration to move our work forward. So that should ECMAC make a recommendation of, an example would be adding on to a new building or building a new building altogether, that we already have a framework of how we want that building to look before we go ahead and decide to build one, and the space we want to use, and particularly talking about flexible learning, which I think a lot of you guys have experienced in smaller quantities at your schools, but we'd like to make that better. And then I also served on policy committee, which met here on Tuesday, December 3rd, with board members Jessica Craig and Jackie Mosqueda Jones and Superintendent Corey McIntyre, along with our Human Services Director Laurel Johnson, Human Resources Coordinator Lisa McLaren, Recruitment and Retention Manager Dante Williams, and General Counsel Tim Palmatier. During the meeting, the committee reviewed proposed policy 404, a new proposed policy pertaining to employee use of family medical leave. Essentially, the policy really is the FMLA rules. The committee also reviewed and revised changes to policy 430 concerning recruitment and selection of employees, as will be discussed in the informational items portion of tonight's meeting. The committee recommended that both policy 404 and policy 430 move forward to first reading tonight. Our next policy committee meeting will be held here at the ESC on Tuesday, March 10th at 4:30 p.m. Policy committee meetings are open to the public, and community members are encouraged to attend. These meetings are not recorded or televised, so if you have an interest, you have to attend in person. So, thank you. That was a lot.
Thank you very much.
Can I say one more thing?
Do you have another update?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a reminder, we do have our next school board listening session on February 11th at 5:15 before our work session. It's at Park Center high school. And the purpose of those are to really have more of a conversational kind of approach versus, people coming and speaking right to us, and it's not a two-way kind of conversation. So this way we can actually sit down and to hear from you guys in our community to see what's going on and talk about it more.
And all of those have been in the community, and we're going to try to continue to do that. So thank you for the reminder. With that, our presentation this evening is enrollment update and projections with Mr. Meyer.
Good evening again. Cheryl Staffy, Superintendent McIntyre, members of the school board. Tonight's presentation is about enrollment trends and projections. Enrollment trends are reviewed annually at this time of year in order to project enrollment for the next fiscal year and to make our new 5-year enrollment projections. So the purpose of tonight's presentation is to provide an overview of enrollment trends used in making our 5-year enrollment projections. These projections are important for decision-making regarding budget and staffing for the upcoming school year. As you recall from our December 3rd school board work session, the enrollment trends and the 5-year enrollment projections are important data points for our Enrollment and Capacity Management Committee, or ECMAC, to consider in their work of making observations and recommendations related to enrollment and capacity in all of our schools. This fall, the committee has reviewed enrollment data and the variances from our projections, which was the basis for the recommendations that will be coming forward in January regarding enrollment and capacity pressures at the elementary and secondary levels. This chart shows Osseo area schools K through 12 fall enrollment over the last 5 years. This fall's enrollment of 20,738 students marks a break in our recent growth trend data. This was the first year in the last 5 that enrollment actually decreased after 4 years of continued growth. Overall enrollment for fiscal year 2020 is less than fiscal year 2019 by 20 students, following an increase of 217 and 301 students in the last 2 years. Additionally, our enrollment of 20,738 was 175 students less than what we projected last fall. This chart shows Osseo area schools' fall enrollment over the last 5 years for elementary and secondary grade spans. The red line on the top shows students served in our secondary grades 6 through 12, and the blue line shows the number of students served in elementary grades K through 5. An analysis of our 5-year historical trend is a key component in projecting future enrollment. Over the past several years, we have seen enrollment stabilize and grow, while elementary enrollments have declined for the last 2 years in a row. We continue to experience an increase in secondary enrollment, which correlates back to when we made the grade span change, from our 7th to 9th grade junior highs to 6th through 8th grade middle schools, and then from our 10th to 12th grade high schools to 9th through 12th high schools. As you know, Minnesota has an enrollment options program, often referred to as open enrollment. Families can make choices to enroll their students in public schools that are not in the school district in which they reside. Osseo area schools has consistently enrolled about 1,300 students from other Minnesota school districts. In recent years, this number has consistently represented around 6% of the total school district enrollment. It remains the case this year, as we are at 6.43% of our total enrollment is from open enrolled students. The majority of these students come from Anoka-Hennepin, Robbinsdale, Minneapolis, and Brooklyn Center. In addition to students coming into Osseo area schools from other public options, school choice means that some of Osseo area school resident students choose options outside of our school district. Please note that fiscal year 2020 data is preliminary because it reflects November 2019 information and not the end of the year data. Information regarding non-public or private school students is an especially early estimate, as it's sometimes difficult to get accurate and up-to-date information on those students at this point in the school year. Preliminary data suggests a slight decrease in the population of private school students of about 91 students to a total of 1,621. Again, this is early data with this, but that's the data that we have at this time. The number of students opting out to other public school districts continues to be in decline. This year, that number is 2,598. While the number of students choosing charter school options appears to continue to grow. This year, that number is 3,584. And then the number of resident students opting to attend Osseo area schools has continued to rise. In looking at those families who choose a public school option for their children, which is just under 76% of our resident students who attend a public school option, are choosing Osseo area schools. This can be referred to as our resident public school capture rate. So for Osseo area schools in fiscal year 2020, we estimate that we are capturing 75.84% of the students whose family chooses a public school option for their child, so either public or charter schools. This is up slightly from 75.63% last year. The next couple of slides will provide a bit more detail about specific public school options. This slide contains a list of Minnesota school districts enrolling more than 50 of Osseo area school resident students. Because choice can go both ways, the last three columns in this chart shows the net gain or loss for Osseo for the last 3 years. For example, by subtracting the number of Anoka resident students choosing to attend Osseo area schools, which is 427, from the number of Osseo area school residents choosing to attend at Anoka, which is 752, we see a net loss of 325 students from Osseo area schools to Anoka. Early data indicates a decline in the net loss of resident students to Anoka, Robbinsdale, Fridley, Wayzata, and Moundsview. Osseo gains more students than we lose from the Minneapolis School District, although as you see from here, it's less this year than in previous years. As we discussed at our work session in early December, in 2016, our district hired a professional survey research firm to gather data from families about why they choose another public education option and why they choose Osseo area schools. The top school choice factors for families leaving the district were non-school related reasons, such as a family move, general academics and curriculum, and issues such as class size and discipline. We will continue to solicit feedback, like our school choice survey, to inform our work as we move forward. This slide contains a list of public charter schools in which 50 or more ISD 279 students attend. Enrollment has grown over time at most of these charter schools. Schools like Parnassus continue to grow with students that live in the Osseo area school boundary. As grade levels continue to grow at Parnassus, it's likely that the number of ISD 279 students that attend that school will grow as well. Athlos Leadership Academy and Noble Academy continue to draw a large number of resident students as well. Though as you see from this chart, Noble Academy did decrease in their resident student enrollment this year. All of the trend information is used to estimate our 5-year enrollment projections. The yellow highlighted columns indicate our current projected enrollments for the next 5 years based upon current patterns of growth. So some points of interest. Overall historical data shows the trend in the past few years, which I talked about a little bit earlier in our presentation. Our Hennepin County birth data, which is in the top column, from the last 5 years is used to project our kindergarten enrollment. Our K through 5 grade cohort size has had a downward trend for the past 3 years, presumably due to the increased draw of public charter schools that we just discussed. While both secondary cohorts have experienced growth over the past 5 years, there was a break in the trend at the high school level this year. As you can see, we decreased grades 9 through 12 from 6,826 students last year to 6,793 students this year. Grade 9 enrollment is at 1,667 students this fall, and this is up almost 200 students from the size of this class last year when they were in 8th grade, which was at 1,478. But it is 22 students lower than what we had projected last fall. At the senior high level, the only grade to come in above our projection was at grade 10, where we were 31 students above our projected number. This overall led to us being 50 students below our projection at the 9 through 12 level. As we have mentioned several times, a break in the increases of overall enrollment we have experienced over the past several years in Osseo area schools. Nonetheless, as we look at our projections, we still see an increase in overall enrollment. Next year, we expect 141 additional students, so an increase in enrollment. But we will closely monitor this, and as we move forward to see how this break in the trend that we've experienced this year, how that will impact our future projections. This last chart depicts the same data in a trend line, just another way to look at it. So you can visually see the slight projected increases in the secondary level, and then elementary enrollment, which is projected to be fairly stable during this time span over the next 5 years. Overall enrollment is projected to continue to grow over the 10-year span, depicted to a total of 21,058 students in the fiscal year 2025. So next steps, over the coming weeks, we will continue to finalize our grade level and site level enrollment projections for fiscal year 2021. These projections will be used then to prepare our revenue budgets and also our staffing allocations for each of our buildings, and will inform our facility planning as well for next year. We will continue to monitor the housing and economic trends carefully, in particular in our school district's northwest corner of the school district, where we anticipate significant future growth. And as we talked about in December, we're not sure exactly when that growth will occur. We'll continue to monitor it and then continue to put that into our assumptions as we move forward with those projections. We will also continue to look at some of the trends that were broken this year and try to get some understanding of why some of those happened. We have limited resources to understand that without having survey data specific to this year, but we are looking for things like charter schools opening up additional sections or schools, and potentially maybe losing students to some of those schools. This information will be utilized for enrollment projection purposes, as well as for further study and observation with our Enrollment and Capacity Management Advisory Committee, which will continue to meet ongoing as we move forward. And with that, I want to thank you, board members, and certainly would be open to answering any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Board members, any questions? Start with you, Director Douglas.
I don't have any questions, thank you.
Director Sounds.
No, just as a point of clarification, the enrollment projections here do not factor in potential growth. It's just the base case.
That is true, yep. We have only done our normal cohort survival model projection, and so we haven't added any of those future growth, only because we don't have solid data from the cities that we work with or that are part of our district to be able to forecast that out yet. As soon as we have some more solid plans in terms of master planning and number of houses and things, we can start to put those into our projections.
And then secondly, this is really good enrollment information, but as we've worked on ECMAC, we have capacity issues right now. So it doesn't, we're not talking about that particular issue tonight. It's nice to feel maybe a little bit of reprieve because we know that we still have long-term needs and we have immediate short-term needs.
Yeah, that's a good point. And what this data that we presented tonight does not talk about is specific buildings. And so while overall we saw a decline in our enrollment, we know that some of those particular schools that we've had some enrollment pressures in the past continue to have those pressures. And so we're monitoring those closely, and that's some of the conversations that our ECMAC team has had.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Director Craig. Director Dustin Walton. Director Mosqueda Jones. And I don't have anything, so thank you very much. Thank you. The next agenda item is the consent agenda. And board members, are there any items that you would like to remove for separate consideration? There are 11 items, and if there's no motion, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as printed?
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on the consent agenda? All in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you, board members. Next up is item number 11. The first action item on tonight's agenda, in fact, it's the second because we just did one. The next action item on tonight's agenda is the approval of entering into an agreement with Ideal Energies to install solar array panels at 13 buildings in the district as part of the Solar Rewards Incentive Program. Mr. Meyer.
Thank you, Chair Ostaffi, Superintendent McIntyre, and school board members. Tonight's presentation is about the proposed solar power agreement with Ideal Energies that was originally presented at the December 3rd school board work session. The action item, as you just heard for this evening, is approval of entering into an agreement with Ideal Energies to install solar array panels at 13 buildings as part of the Solar Rewards Incentive Program. So just to give you a little bit of background, as we heard earlier this evening, school districts across the state of Minnesota, including Osseo area schools, are constantly under financial pressure due to our state funding not keeping up with the rate of inflation over the past several years. This has necessitated districts to get even more creative to find ways to increase other revenue or decrease expenditure items. One area to illustrate this point is through our long-term facility maintenance work that we have made significant investments in over the past few years. Our intentionality and deferred maintenance work has resulted in an annual 22% energy cost avoidance since 2016, which equates to over $1 million per year. To further these efforts, the school district has been exploring the possibility of utilizing solar technology on select building rooftops to increase our utility cost avoidance. Not only has solar technology continued to improve over time, but there are currently several incentives available to school districts to increase affordability and return on investment. Here is a picture of what those solar panels on rooftops would look like. As you can see, the footprint is not significant, and in most cases, you won't even be able to see these panels from the ground. So at a basic level, how does solar work? This is a process for solar array functionality. Solar arrays are installed, and the energy produced would decrease the school district's utility expense for that building. If more energy would be produced for a building than needed to power that facility, which is not likely, then the additional power would return to the power grid. So this is the opportunity before the school board this evening. The district would enter into a partnership with Ideal Energies, a local solar developer that has extensive experience working with organizations, particular school districts, and other government entities across Minnesota, to install and operate solar energy systems to produce utility cost avoidance. As you can see, some of the school districts Ideal has previously worked with include Eden Prairie Schools, Minneapolis, Burnsville, White Bear Lake, and Orono. The key to this program and what makes it practical for school districts like Osseo area schools is there is no upfront cost to acquiring these systems. Ideal Energy installs the 40 kilowatt solar array on our roofs, and the district automatically takes ownership. The district's obligation would be to lease back the units to Ideal Energies and then to agree to purchase energy from the company for 10 years, rather than purchasing that same energy from Xcel Energy. This purchase agreement would include a 30% discount on the energy purchase to ensure a cost savings during the course of those 10 years. After the agreement is terminated, after 10 years, the district would then have full control of the system, the energy production, and the full cost avoidance for the remaining life of the unit, which has been projected out to be 40 years. This program is designed to take advantage of several incentives already in place for these solar energy systems. Rebates from Xcel Energy have already been secured for the 13 sites in our district. Along with the Xcel incentives, there are additional temporary incentives for low-income facilities, defined as serving students that have more than 50% of free and reduced lunch qualification. All 13 of the proposed facilities have also been qualified, and the incentives for this has been secured if the board decides to move forward with the project. Finally, there are tax credits that are available, and because school districts cannot typically monetize these tax credits, the proposed structure of the agreement with Ideal Energies allows school districts to take advantage of these incentives. And as a side note, the federal tax credit that I talk about is currently at 30% of the total cost of the solar system. This amount would move to 26% after January 1st of 2020. So here is the list of the 13 buildings that I talked about. These 13 school facilities meet the criteria of those incentives that I talked about, which have already been secured. While other buildings in the district may be eligible for other solar programs, these 13 have been identified as priorities because of those additional funds through the income-based incentive program. So here are some specific cost avoidance estimate for each individual unit. As you see, the first 10 years of savings are lower because the district will be obligated to purchase power through Ideal Energies, again with a 30% savings over what we would pay with Xcel Energy. These savings include the cost for insurance and maintenance, as well as a small amount of revenue for leasing the units back to Ideal Energies for those 10 years. Starting in year 11, you can see that the cost avoidance and utility costs increases significantly. This assumes that the lease agreement is terminated and that the district can take advantage of all of the energy production. This also includes the cost of insurance and maintenance on the units. The 25 years that's projected in this screen is projected because that's the warranty period. 25 years is how long those solar arrays are warranted. While the arrays are warranted for 25 years, we would anticipate the units will continue to produce for many more years after that. The cost avoidance projection goes out 40 years, and as you can see from this slide, the projected cost avoidance for each individual unit over 40 years is $350,117. So if we look at all 13 facilities combined, you will see a total cumulative savings over the first 10 years of almost $200,000. In years 11 through 25, you start to see those more significant savings, with the total cumulative cost avoidance after that warranty at that warranty period of 25 years being $1.8 million. And then again, projecting out those 40 years, the cost avoidance projected for the 13 units would be $4.5 million. I wanted to take a quick moment to update the board on some of the work that we've done since we presented to the board at the work session on December 3rd. First, General Counsel Tim Palmatier and I have worked closely with our contract legal counsel to review and negotiate the contract language to ensure limited risk to the school district. While we have made good progress in this area, we still have a few minor items to work through, but we are hopeful that we will have resolution before December 31st to take advantage of that 30% federal tax incentive. Also, we have verified with our legal counsel that because of the nature of the project and the fact that we are only agreeing to purchase power from Ideal, there are not any additional bid or quote requirements that we would be obligated to. We have worked with our insurance company to make sure that they will cover the units and that the cost is reasonable and within the parameters of the financial projections that Ideal has put together. And finally, Wold Architects, who, as you know, we work with for much of our facility work, has met with Ideal Energies to understand how Ideal determines an individual roof's capacity to handle a solar array system without jeopardizing the integrity of the roof structure or longevity. Ideal Energy provides stamped structural reports for each roof before any installation would take place. If there are any structural concerns that would require building alterations to accommodate, the district would have the contractual right to not move forward with that particular project on that building. Because of this process, as well as the feedback from other clients that Wold works with, they have given us the indication that they do not have concerns at this point, but they would continue to evaluate alongside with us as we go through the process of looking at each of those individual roofs for any problems that we would come across. So our next steps, if the board approves the action item before them this evening, is to finalize that contract language before December 31st and to sign the contracts for each of the 13 projects. At that point, the engineering review of each roof will commence, and we will determine if some or all of the buildings will support the units without any alterations. Assuming that's the case, construction will take place with completion scheduled to be completed no later than December 31st of 2020. The last piece, which was discussed at the December 3rd work session, is the educational component. Once the solar arrays are in operation, we will loop in our Division of Leadership, Teaching, and Learning to look at the curriculum that was designed to see how we may bring solar power generation process into the classroom. And with that, administration recommends approval of this action item this evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Meyer. So for the action item this evening, is there a motion to approve entering into an agreement with Ideal Energies to install solar array panels at 13 buildings as part and purchase the power as part of the Solar Rewards Incentive Program?
So moved.
There is a motion. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Motion there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion regarding this program?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yep, Director Craig.
Ron, quick question for you. Is there a provision in the contract that guarantees power purchased through Ideal Energies would be discounted from Excel throughout those 10 years?
Yeah, so there's a provision of the contract that does obligate us to purchasing the power for those 10 years. And then the guarantee in the contract is that it will not dip below a certain production level. So it doesn't say specifically, because Ideal has no way of forecasting and knowing for sure what the energy rates with Excel will be. But what they do is guarantee a certain amount or level of production, so that if it dips below that, then Ideal Energy reimburses us for that amount.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Director Mosqueda-Jones?
I don't have anything.
Director Douglas?
Yes, I just would like to say that I am really excited to see that our district is taking an initiative to reduce our impact on our resources in the community, and by using solar power at some of these sites and taking advantage of a program that's only available to us right now. So thank you for all your hard work on this project.
Sure. Thank you.
I do have a comment. Oh,
Okay,
sorry.
thank you.
I just want just to state for the record that I am in a school building currently that has solar panels by this company. And what everyone else might not be aware of is that there's also opportunities for academic learning around the solar panels and the energy. And so we could utilize a lot of this to also implement into the classroom. And I find that very exciting.
Thank you. I thank you for the due diligence that has gone into this. I know there's been a lot of questions that your team has brought up, that we brought up as a board, and I want to thank Ideal for answering those and coming back. The diligence over the last 2 weeks with legal review and contract review, I think that has been very helpful in making sure that we're going forward with this. I mean, this is very much a financial transaction, and saving on average 18 grand a year for 10 years and 100 to 150,000 a year after that. That's what we're looking at, and I appreciate the effort that the team's put in, and this has been going on for quite some time. So it's just very recently come to the board, but I know the staff has been working on it.
And for context, I think we started having conversation even before I got here. So it's been over a year that these conversations have had, and a lot of conversations with Ideal behind the scenes even before we brought it, because we wanted to make sure we thoroughly vetted it before bringing it to this point. So.
Dr. Dawson-Long?
Yeah, no, I'm really excited. What I'm probably most excited about is just the opportunity to infuse a whole new kind of realm about solar and clean energy to our students and their families through, Jackie mentioned some of the curriculum, but also, just that hands-on learning, and then hopefully eventually, potentially jobs in the future, just to start planting that seed. I think that's really, really important in our school, so I'm excited for that.
Thank you. Director Simons?
No, I just echo all of the statements made, and we had extensive discussion on this at the last work session. So I really appreciate all of the hard work and appreciate the learning opportunity and definitely appreciate the financials of this as well.
All right. Any other questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, we have a motion to approve in entering into agreement with Ideal Energies. We have a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Let the sun shine in. I've been waiting for that.
You worked out.
Yeah, that wasn't planned. The next action item on tonight's agenda is the 2019 payable 2020 levy limitation certification. Mr. Meyer, could you please?
Thank you. Chair Olstafi, Superintendent McIntyre, and school board members. As mentioned in our Truth and Taxation presentation earlier this evening, the proposed tax levy for Osseo area schools for taxes payable in 2020 and for our district's 2021 fiscal year is $100,128,683.08, which is a 0.57% increase from taxes payable in 2019. If approved, because of the increase in the tax capacity in our district, taxpayers will realize an estimated $32 decrease in their school district taxes on a $250,000 home next year. Administration recommends approval of the final levy proposal at $100,128,683.08.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Board members, is there a motion to approve the 2019 payable 2020 levy limitation certification at a 0.57% increase? I think that was with the number, what was the number, Mr. Meyer? 560?
560. I'm gonna swear 564, 622, I believe.
With an increase of 564,222, and what was the total number again?
$564,522 is the increase. And the total is $100,128,683.08.
So, board, is there a motion to approve the total and the increase?
So moved.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion regarding this levy?
So we had extensive discussion at our last work session, and Ron, I really appreciate this presentation, the degree of detail, and I know some of it's required by the state, but I really think it's a good explanation for the public to understand our sources of funding, as well as that high-level view of how our funds are utilized. So from my point of view, when we look at where the increase is, it's primarily related to decisions that we have previously approved as a board, and so for that reason, I'm in support of the 0.57 because it's consistent with what we've said we needed to do as a board, prior decisions that we've made. We've also had lengthy discussion about the strategic investments that we need to make going forward to improve academics for all of our students across the district, as well as future facilities. And that will all come together in our strategic plan and in our long-term integrated facilities planning as well. So I think with that, looking at this small increase and it being an actual overall decrease for most taxpayers because of the property value or the property growth, I think that's a strong benefit for all of us. The last comment I'd make is I think one of the best things that we can do is continue to provide strong ROI with this investment, an academic ROI, and that's exactly what we've said that we need to do when we look at this from our strategic work ahead.
Thank you. Director Douglas.
I just echo like everything that Tanya just said. But again, from my own personal perspective, I really struggled with going ahead and approving this because of some of the decisions that we've made as a board and things that we've said that we would or wouldn't do as a board. And one of those things is that we had said that if we didn't need the money in the past, that we wouldn't do it again. However, our priorities as a board have, I think, evolved, and we have a lot of work that we need to do that we've committed to doing for the betterment of all of our students and staff. And so therefore, I intend to support the increase. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Douglas. Dr. Mosqueda Jones?
With the understanding that most people will have lower taxes this year, and that 0.57% was approved by the voters. And we are also entering a strategic plan, which may include investment in areas to support that plan and improving experiences for all students. I would vote in favor of the 0.57 increase.
Thank you. My position at the meeting 2 weeks ago was that this is a nuisance increase. It's 0.57. It's $560,000 on $100 million. We have plenty in reserves. We have no direct linkage of any increase to direct spending programs as of yet. We will in the future, but we don't have that now. It is minor. We're talking, an extra $8 reduction on that $32 reduction on a typical $250,000 house, which is another increase of 25% in the reduction. Again, it's only $8. It's small. However, we had said we wouldn't increase it. Last year was a 7.8 or 7.6%, pretty substantial increase. This year, I think we have the ability to level that out. Even though it's small, I'm going to support a 0% increase. Thank you. Director Craig?
No, I'm in agreement. Well, the average home may experience a reduction. That's not true across the board. And I just traditionally stand against increases every year. So I will not support the increase this year.
Director Delson-Wong?
I would just say we did have a lengthy discussion at our last work session. I'm of the mind that we have a new board. We've certainly evolved in our priorities. We want to, I believe we all want to do some things now immediately that can move the dial for all of our students in the district after seeing all of our reports on enrollment and world's best workforce. And that all, I believe, will coincide, the timing with receiving these funds, and then our strategic priorities, which will be going out in the community and talking to our staff and to see what those are. So I'm very much in support of this levy.
Okay.
I'd add one additional comment. I think it's worth to know, I don't disagree that some of our processes don't quite line up to make all the pieces fit together at the right timing, so we're working to change that, and I think that will result in better decisions overall, so that we're very clear on even better tying the choices in tax levy with how we deploy the funding as well. So I'm looking forward to that change going forward.
This is a transition year, as the timing is off, as we are reviewing what we need to do to improve. And you're right, so thank you for that comment and bringing that up. So we have a motion to approve the levy with the slight increase. And with that, is there a motion, is there all in favor of that motion? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay.
No.
Motion passes 4-2. Thank you very much. All right, now the fun stuff. The final action item this evening is the recommendation to accept gifts to the district totaling $99,745.11. Is there a motion to accept the gifts to the district totaling $99,745.11?
So moved.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
I would like to propose that the chair add just like $255 just to put us to the 100,000.
Put me on the spot.
So close.
I can't do that this month yet, but I will have to review this in beforehand. So, any other discussion? With that, Do we all graciously vote and say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
6-0. And again, we appreciate all the efforts of everyone involved in donating $5 to $30,000, and I think that was the range this month, and that's incredible. So thank you very much. Next up, Mr. Palmetier, will you please provide the information about the first reading of policies 404 and 430?
Thank you, Chair Staffy, school board members, and Superintendent McIntyre. Is that correct? There are two policies on the agenda for first reading tonight. Policy 404, which pertains to family and medical leave for school district employees, and Policy 430, recruitment and selection of employees. First, the new Policy 404. Up to this time, the school district has not had a formal policy addressing the rights and responsibilities of the district and employees with respect to family, medical, and other types of leave. While a family and medical leave policy is not strictly required under state or federal law, the district has previously been advised by the U.S. Department of Labor that it should adopt such a policy. The new policy incorporates many of the requirements of the FMLA regulations and Minnesota parenting and leave laws. In addition, the policy reinforces that regular and predictable attendance is an essential function for all employment within the district. It clarifies that proper certification will be required for approval of FMLA leave. It clarifies that an allotment of up to 12 weeks of FMLA leave will be provided on a rolling year basis. It establishes that when taking FMLA leave, the general practice will be to require employees to use accrued sick leave. It allows for permissible use of fitness for duty certifications for employees returning from FMLA leave. And finally, it incorporates considerations for leave as a potential accommodation under the ADA. And then finally, Policy 430, which is a rewrite of a policy, recruitment and selection of employees. This policy has not been reviewed or revised since March of 1999. The proposed revised policy maintains several of the provisions in the current policy, including a requirement for equal opportunity for employment for all persons. However, the policy was also updated to reflect the district's priority work and its more recent efforts to hire and maintain a workforce that support and reflect the diverse student populations that we serve here in the district. First reading begins a 4-week period for reaction to proposed policies by concerned groups or individuals. After a 4-week period, the school may adopt any and all of the policies after second reading. The proposed revisions to these policies are available on the school district website with the agenda for this meeting for tonight. Comments on the policies discussed here may also be directed to the school board or myself, and comments on the policies may also be provided online through the school district policy and procedures webpage located on the district website.
Thank you, Mr. Palmetier. Board members, any questions? So with this policy, Mr. Palmetier, does that impact our negotiations or relations with the union, or how does that change anything within our contractual language?
This is with respect to Policy 404,
Yes.
family medical leave. Well, in preparation for the proposal of this policy, Joel Miltier did meet with the various bargaining groups and did have discussions about the proposed policy. I will say, as it relates to collective bargaining agreements, the collective bargaining agreements and leave provisions which are found therein certainly control in those situations. FMLA, in many respects, just establishes that baseline, and our contracts actually, in many respects, can exceed that.
Okay, thank you.
I think the goal was to take federal law and just reflect it in our policy.
Okay, no, I just want to make sure that it wasn't interfering with the relationship we've developed, through negotiations with the union. Okay. Any other questions on 404? On 430? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Palmetier. And before we go into closed session, I want to thank all of the parents and students who are still here, hanging on to what was a long meeting, untypically, and I hope you all get A's. So tell your teacher to look at the video to see who's still here. So thank you very much. And at this time, the board will be going into closed session. Board members, is there a motion to recess the regular meeting for 5-10 minutes and reconvene in room N10 for the purpose of a closed meeting of the Osseo Area School Board pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.03 to consider strategy, parameters, and developments and labor negotiations for the following bargaining groups, teachers and principals. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We do. Do we have a second? There's a second. All in favor of going into closed session and taking a break in between there, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We are now in a break and going into closed session in 5 to 10 minutes.